Hey, how's it going everybody? It's Tanner here and welcome back to a new Ninjago video here on the channel. In today's video we're going to be covering something a little different and something a little fun, and that is predicting the Rotten Tomatoes scores for each of the Ninjago seasons. Now if you have no idea what Rotten Tomatoes is, it's essentially a website which is comprised of several critics and audience members as well to basically judge and critique a form of media, whether that be a film or a television show. And essentially what happens is there are two separate scores, the critical score and the audience score. Each one is represented by a certain percentage, and the actual percentage score is essentially all of the positive reviews for whatever media the critics and audiences are reviewing. So if something gets a 60%, for example, that would mean that 60% of the reviews were positive. This is true for essentially everything on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a very popular website when it comes to, critical reviews and actual audience members as well. Anybody can really put in their input for anything, and that will count towards the audience score. And as of right now, the only Ninjago thing on the website that actually has any sort of review is the Lego Ninjago movie, which is kind of obvious because that was the big, movie for Ninjago, and those reviews are made up of a 55% for a critical score and a 46% for the audience score, meaning that 55% of the critics found it somewhat enjoyable and 46% of the audience found it enjoyable. So kind of lackluster there, if I must say so. So I figured it would be kind of fun to go through each of the Ninjago seasons and basically give them a Rotten Tomatoes score. There is no way that any of the seasons would actually, legitimately be, reviewed on the website, at least in my opinion, so I can't really give them critical scores, but what I can do is give them an audience score based on community reception, so that's kind of what I'm going to be going off of here. In this video, I will be predicting basically the audience scores for each of the Ninjago seasons, and let me just say before we get started, this is my own opinion. This isn't, confirmed in any way, shape, or form. This is just what I think would happen, and again, since I can't really rate the critical scores, just know that these are specifically from the audience's perception. At least my perception of the audience's perception. Oh, and I definitely should point out before the video starts, if a score falls under a 60%, it is considered to be a rotten score, so not a very good score, and then above 60% is a fresh rating, so just take that into consideration as you watch the video. So starting off with the pilot season here, the pilot was the very solid start to the Ninjago story. Definitely a lot of positive things going on with this actual story itself. A lot of people really like it, a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia for the pilot seasons, I know I specifically do. The actual episodes are really fun to watch, the story was really great, and overall the pilots were an extremely solid start to the overall story, and I do believe that the audience would react very positively to this season itself. It's definitely not the best thing that Ninjago has ever seen, so just for the purposes of this video, we're going to be giving it a 60%, which of course is a fresh rating. It's right on that margin there, and I do think a lot of people really like the pilots. I mean, again, a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia for them, so for that reason, yeah, 60%. Next up, we have season 1, which a lot of people also have a lot of nostalgia for, myself included, but this really shouldn't be based on nostalgia, but of course it is the audience's score, so it's going to be skewed a little bit from that. And season 1 definitely had a lot of strong things going. It was basically the start of the common series that we know of today as Ninjago. While it wasn't the pilot episode, season 1 definitely, embraced that TV format and actually kept things going for the series. There's a lot of good stuff to be found here, a lot of new interesting characters pop up, and a lot of old characters, of course, shine very brightly in this actual season. So for that, I will say that season 1 would receive an 80% audience score from the audience themselves. The only thing that I can see taking away from it is kind of the slow nature of the episodes themselves, and sometimes things get a little ridiculous, but that's neither here nor there. Jumping right into season 2 though, this one actually has a lot going on as well, specifically a lot of filler and a lot of final battle stuff, so the season is kind of split 50-50. Of course, I don't think that the general audience hates season 2. I really like season 2. It's not my favorite Ninjago season ever, and the first half of it isn't very good in my opinion, but the final battle stuff is really, climactic for the series, and I really do like it quite a bit. So it's kind of hard to even this out here. I will say that I will be giving the final battle season, a 70% prediction for an audience score. I feel like a lot of people might think the same way, in which the final battle stuff was really good, but some of the filler episodes towards the beginning of the season are kind of lackluster. Either way, a 70% is not anything terrible for Ninjago. It's certainly something really good, so we're going to go ahead and move right on here to Season 3. So Season 3 is definitely a fan favorite. While it might be a very short Ninjago season, a lot of people really enjoy Season 3 of Ninjago, otherwise known as Rebooted. And a lot of good things are happening here, so I can definitely see why a lot of people would really like it. The only complaints that I've seen towards the season are that it's way too short, and some stuff is kind of redundant, and some stuff is kind of ridiculous. But of course, it's Ninjago. A lot of things are going to be redundant and ridiculous sometimes. sometimes, but Season 3 has a lot of good stuff going on too. The actual story between Lloyd, the Overlord, and Zane, all of that intertwined within one another definitely makes for a very fun and enjoyable Ninjago season, despite the actual short runtime of the only 8-episode long duration. With that being said, Season 3, otherwise known as Rebooted, will be receiving an 85% Rotten Tomatoes score. Definitely not too terrible there, and now we're going to be moving on to Season 4. Season 4, otherwise known as the Tournament of Elements, is my favorite Ninjago season, and I very well could be a little biased because of this, but Season 4 is really well done in my opinion. There's definitely a lot going on that I really enjoy. Master Chen is a phenomenal villain in my opinion. The actual Tournament of Elements setup is really great, and it leads into the actual true plot of the season, in which Master Chen is basically a psychopath and wants to turn him and all of his followers into anacondrae. At the same time, the ninja are paired up with several elemental allies, which I really enjoy as well. Definitely a lot going on in the season that I enjoy. Not too much in the way that I don't like, but I've seen a lot of people say that Master Chen really isn't that good. So for the purposes of this video, Season 4 will be getting a 90% audience score from me. Of course, again, I might be a little biased on this, but I do personally feel like Season 4 should deserve one of the higher scores. And again, it's my video, so what are you really going to do? Next up, we have Season 5, otherwise known as Possession, which is definitely another very common season that a lot of people say is their favorite. Season 5 is definitely a fan favorite for several reasons, including Moro, which is probably one of the better villains in Ninjago. We actually also have a lot of cinematic elements going on as well. Essentially, the entire Season 5 story is extremely solid, extremely moving, and is one of the better things to actually come out of Ninjago. 2015 was a great year for Ninjago, and Season 5 is no exception from that, and I will be giving Season 5 an 85% for my audience score. I feel like a lot of people really like it, and I myself would agree. It's definitely a great season. Next up, we have Skybound, otherwise known as Season 6 of Ninjago. Now, Skybound, I really haven't seen a lot of negativity towards, but I have seen some complaints about how the entirety of the story probably doesn't line up anymore and doesn't really matter because of the whole timeline reset thing at the end of the season, and that is a little bit irritating. I will agree with that. However, Skybound definitely has a lot of great things going on. The Jay and Nia story is one of my favorite things in Ninjago. It's definitely a highlight of the season itself. Nadakon is a terrific villain, and all in all, Season 6 is very solid, but I don't think it reaches anywhere near Possession or Tournament of Element levels, but I will be giving it still an 80% for the audience score. I do feel like it would receive somewhere in the 80s, if not the late 70s, but I do feel like somewhere around there would be very appropriate for Skybound. Next up is Day of the Departed, and you guys already know how I feel about Day of the Departed. A lot of people really kind of think that this season is a little lackluster, and I'm aware it's not actually a season, but it's basically what we got, so Day of the Departed definitely counts in this video. And yeah, a lot of people aren't really that big of a fan of it. I personally am not a big fan of it as well. I've seen a lot of people like it though, so I mean, it's probably going to be a little bit mixed from what I can tell. However, I do think there is a lot in Day of the Departed that is kind of lackluster. The whole villain subplot is kind of strange, but I did really enjoy a lot of this stuff with Cole. With Yang, not so much. Again, Day of the Departed is kind of a mixed bag. It's definitely one of the weakest things in Ninjago in my opinion, and for the purposes of this video, I will be giving Day of the Departed a 45% audience rating, which is the first rotten score that we technically have in Ninjago, and we'll see a few more of those going down the list here. Next up is Season 7, otherwise known as Hands of Time, otherwise known as the probably most forgettable and kind of lackluster actual solid Ninjago season that exists. A lot of people really don't recall Hands of Time. I myself don't really care for it too much as well. There's definitely some good stuff going on though, but it just kind of feels like the middle season, you know? It doesn't really feel like its own solid story, but that doesn't mean again that there aren't good things happening. Achronix and Crux are some of the better villains that we've seen in Ninjago, and I did appreciate a lot of the Kai and Nia stuff. Unfortunately, a lot of things going on in this season kind of get forgotten about in future seasons, so for that reason, Season 7 really isn't that, I guess, praised by fans very much. And it will be getting a 55% from me for an audience rating, which again is another rotten score. Next up though, we have Season 8, otherwise known as Sons of Garmadon. Now a lot of people, I guess, were really turned away from this season at first, but as this season actually aired, I remember seeing a lot of fan criticism actually turn into praise for what the season could actually do. The main source of criticism, from what I could tell, came from the actual designs of the ninja and how they were taking influence from the Lego Ninjago movie, which we saw the Rotten Tomatoes score for that earlier, and that was kind of, you know, a little weird, but the actual Season 8 Sons of Garmadon story itself isn't terrible. In fact, it's probably one of my favorite seasons throughout Ninjago. I feel like a lot of people definitely turned their opinions towards the season for the better after the season actually came out. It was written by Dan and Kevin Hageman, which of course is a plus, and overall, Season 8 is definitely a very solid story in Ninjago, and I will be giving it a 90% audience rating. I feel like a lot of people really like Sons of Garmadon now, and I feel like a lot of the original negative opinions towards it have kind of skewed away in favor of the actual positivity towards the story itself. Immediately following Sons of Garmadon, we had Season 9, otherwise known as Hunted. Now, Hunted is a big step down from Sons of Garmadon in my own opinion, and a lot of people do agree with that. I mean, Hunted, well, it's still very good and it still has a very solid story. It's essentially running two stories at the same time, which can kind of get annoying and confusing. I mean, we have two completely different stories going on in two completely different environments. I can see why some people would kind of get turned away from that, and the actual audience perception from what I've seen is kind of mixed, honestly. A lot of people really enjoy Hunted for one aspect of the story, while the other story kind of gets overshadowed, and to that I can agree. There's definitely some, I guess, heavy opinions towards one side, at least for me personally, but overall the actual season itself as one collective unit definitely isn't terrible, and in my opinion deserves at least a 70% on the audience rating, so that's basically what I'm going to be giving it. Next up we have March of the Oni, which of course is Season 10, otherwise known as the shortest Ninjago season of all time, consisting of only 4 episodes. It actually aired as a movie here in the United States, and the reception towards Season 10, otherwise known as March of the Oni, has been extremely mixed. Some people think it's the worst thing to come out of Ninjago, while some people think it's a very solid story. Myself, I am on the side of it being kind of solid. However, I do recognize several of its flaws, and for the sake of actually combining all the elements from the community and merging them together, I believe March of the Oni would get somewhere around a 50% on the actual Rotten Tomatoes scale for it. Again, nothing too terrible going on here, but in my opinion, it definitely seems like there could be more to actually see in March of the Oni, but that doesn't mean that there aren't things that I really enjoy. I personally really enjoyed March of the Oni, and I would consider it to be a very solid end to the Oni and Dragon trilogy. And now we jump into Season 11, otherwise known as Secrets of the Forbidden Spinjitzu. A lot of people might be thinking that, hey, Season 11 technically isn't over yet, so how can we rate it? Well, essentially we can't realistically rate it, so I'm just going to be giving it, I guess, a score of what I predict it will receive when the actual season is over. Reception for Season 11 from the fans has not been very good from what I can see. A lot of people are very, I guess, negative towards it, but at the same time there is a lot of positivity going on as well from what I can see. But overall I can't really speak too heavily on this as the season is not yet over, so for the purposes of this video here, I will be giving Season 11, otherwise known as Secrets of the Forbidden Spinjitzu, a 45% for the audience rating right now, just based on things that I've seen in the community and just some of the backlash that I've seen towards the season in general. So thanks a lot for sticking around and watching this video. If you did make it to the end, let me know down below in the comments. There was a lot to do in this video, and it was pretty fun to go ahead and talk about what Rotten Tomatoes score the actual episodes and the actual seasons would receive. I mean, let's be real, Ninjago would probably be torn apart by critics pretty heavily if it was given a critical score, but of course the audience scores were a little bit more easy to calculate as I interact with the Ninjago audience nearly daily, so it was easy to go ahead and actually recognize what was going on in people's minds and how each person would actually rate the overall seasons as it is. So let me know down below in the comments what you would give each of these seasons personally if you were to give it your own Rotten Tomatoes score, and if you have an idea of what the critical scores would be, feel free to let me know that down below in the comments. With all that being said though, that'll just about do it for this video here, so thank you so much for watching this one. If you enjoyed the video, as always, don't forget to give it a huge thumbs up rating, and of course be sure to hit the subscribe button if you've not done so already. Once again guys, the comment section is there for the various discussions that you would like to have regarding this topic, or if you just had a comment of a general nature, that's fine as well. In the description you'll find the links towards my other forms of social media, whether it be my Twitter, my Instagram, my Patreon, or my merch. Be sure to support me on all those platforms if you would like to. With all that being said, you guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Once again, my name is TannerFishies, and with that I bid you farewell.